people.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, roll the coin, Elder. Let's get it.
Hey man, also like I say, this right here is evidence. All the tapes that me and Rod been doing is all evidence of all the information that we seeing. You know what I'm saying? So this pretty much is another nail in the coffin. Because when Rod said something about the Adjudication Act, then we went backtrack and found out that, hey, how did they reenact this Adjudication Act? They reenacted it through hijacking the Constitution 1789, 88. Hey, Rod, could you go in on that? So they hijacked the Constitution and they created this Adjudication Act, which I think was the Freemasons. And people blaming us, say, oh, the Moors did it. Right? Because one bad Moor like Benjamin Banneker. Go ahead.
Remember when we say Moors, we make distinctions between dirty Moors and righteous Moors.
Right.
And a lot of people get that confused and they attack all Moors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, just for some clarification, as soon as Empress Verdiasi let the dirty Moors in, she couldn't go no further. Her infiltrators was present.
Mm-hmm.
Malachi was doing just fine until he opened up the Nubian Nation of Moors chapter of the Holy Tabernacle Ministries. Soon as they came in, the bullshit came. Pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an accident. When Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, but man pale-faced enrollee in the Nation of Islam, he said the Nation of Islam has been thoroughly infiltrated by the New York Police Department and the FBI. Right? Then he publicly started naming names. But during his public address, he said, I'm not telling you nothing that the police don't know because they told me. The police gave Malcolm the names of the infiltrators to try to get him to roll on Elijah Muhammad. The audio tape is available on YouTube when the FBI went to Malcolm X to try to get him to work against Elijah Muhammad. Right? So it's not a secret. It's an open secret. It's something that's in the public domain that everybody has overlooked or neglected because it was hidden in plain sight. When it's hidden in plain sight is what we most likely to overlook. Example, everybody remember the I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, but don't nobody remember the interview he did when he was standing in the church explaining how the European peasantry was brought over and undergirded with an economic floor and mechanized their farms in order to undermine and override the farms of the people of the land. We forget about that part. We forget about what he told Harry Belafonte. I think I might have integrated my people into a burning house. Right? But how did he find out? Because this is a 4-year gap from 63, I Have a Dream speech, to days before his assassination, where he's giving this speech saying, I'm not sure this nonviolent stuff gonna work, but I done committed to it this far. I got to figure out a way to use it for what? To go get the check. I'm going to Washington and I'm going to get the check. Right? We also forget that he said, I'm tired of fighting for something that should have been mine at birth. That means that he knew what his birthright was. But between 63 and 67, 68, what happened that made him change his position and his ideology? It's called the Great Meeting. There was a mainstream media blackout, but it was reported with photographs in the Muhammad Speaks back then, and since been reprinted several times in the final call under the Minister Farrakhan. Elijah Muhammad gave him the whole scoop. We the tribes that don't got treaties. The tribes that don't got treaties is going to be treated worse than all other treaty tribes because we don't want to do business with the interloper. There's receipts on my page right now where it clearly say that it was black Indians that was working for the government protecting the colonizers from black Indians. Let that sink in. Roll the coin. What's next? You're on mute.
Hey, we got a couple videos about Benjamin Banneker, and I got all the videos you sent me. But this is another question I want to ask you. Now, when you gave me that Adjudication Act, and then I backtracked and found, like I said, found out that they did this ratification, which is pretty much hijacking, and right before that. And then from that, they created the Judicial Act, that created the federal jurisdiction. And then so everything, if based on what the information you gave me last week in the tape we did in the Big Mama's 8, what adjudication thing is a fraud pretty much, and people have already proven this in court, like the general the EE General Electric Company went against a couple companies, went against them and proven that it was a fraud. So that stands the reason the Nationalization Act, copyright, the Patent Act, all these acts that came after that is all fruits of a poisonous tree, right, Rod?
Well, when the Pope rescinded the Discovery Doctrine, everything that follows the Discovery Doctrine is rendered null and void using the fruit of the poisonous tree. What do that mean, though? The fruit of the poisonous tree is this. If I rob young elder at gunpoint and take $100,000,
right,
and I take that $100,000 and I open up a dry cleaners, the dry cleaners is bringing in $10,000 a week in revenue.
Right.
I'm banking it. I'm not spending it. 90 days later, that's man. Yeah, that's like $90,000 in the bank.
Right.
Right now, they catch me. They find the weapon, and they still find some of young elder's original money in my person. So they know it ain't no mistake about it. They got the right person. I'm the one that robbed young elder. Okay, now under the fruit of the poisonous tree, when they find out what I did with the money, right? Yep. They take my cleaners. They take my bank account. I cannot benefit from these fruits that I gained from this robbing young elder situation.
Why? Yeah.
Now, it's two things they can do with it. Normally, if the injured party is privy to the information, which means the was swarthy, because they call me the swarth. Right? And he had a genetic breeding program trying to correct the genetic defect in the people. This is where he got the blonde hair, blue eye Aryan race when the Aryans is not blonde hair nor blue eye. The real Aryans are the people they call the Dravidians. But Enki's children was removed from power by Enlil's children in the Vermanus Wars. But we don't know nothing about that, so we won't know how to retell them what's taking place. The real Aryans look like the Jacksons 5 in 1973 in the family portrait. That's what they looked like.
That's right, Rod.
Right. Now, they giving us Enlil stringy-haired kids, avatars, right? Calling them divine incarnations, and all they doing is taking what Enki said when he was the first fat Buddha, right? And as the first real Buddha, and then they retread him with Enlil's children. And now he looks Polynesian. Or he looks stringy hair Indian, Hindu. That's not the original Buddha. The original Buddha was called the Old Man Africa. But they call him that in modern terms. That's not what he was called back then. He was called the Aethiops. The Aethiops is where you get your word Ethiopia. And this is why the old maps at one time had Ethiopia scrawled across them for the entirety of the continent before they changed the continent's name to Al Sudan. Right? Then you see the old maps with Sudan in English character written across the continent. That's when after the fall of the Songhai, Mali, and Ghana empires. Right? When each one of those empires was in power, everything else was like outreaches. The government wasn't ran how government is ran now. The only purpose of government is to allocate resources to diverse places. Otherwise, you don't need it. Mm. Right? Most of the functions of government used to be a family's traditional job. They just passed it down in the job. Everybody was rich, but they had what was called the family business, which a lot of people last names was derived from what they families did. Mm-hmm. Like the tailors, they used to make clothes prior to the Anasazi, the great weavers of fabric. Or you got people like the goldsmiths who used to smelt the gold for Big Mama. And they was the ones who used to set the standard for the coins in which we use for trade. Right? Then you had the silversmith clan. They did the same thing with the silver. Right? The blacksmiths, they were the ones who smelted the iron and formed the iron into the metal artwork. Right? Those are under the Kripke, the crooked man, patron saint of the handicapped, and those who work with iron. It just so happened that bodybuilders in modern times are the offshoots of those bloodlines, like Ronnie Coleman. Right? This is where Big Tookie come in, because that's his function energetically to the earth, to be the patron saint of the handicap and those who work with iron. And that's why he had to give Schwarzenegger the rub for Schwarzenegger to become great. Mm. He had to touch greatness to become greatness. But he just took it from our system to their system in order to help us with our system. Right? So everything ties back to us at the end of the day. And what's this next question?
Somebody said, "Yo, Rod, Wakanda. What you think about?" It says, "What tribe was Wakanda made about? You think?"
If you go to the movie, right, it's telling you Tupac's life story from the time he was in the Bay. It pick up after he left Baltimore. He in the Bay now. This is when he first had the encounter. T'Challa first had his encounter at the beginning of the first movie. Right? At the end of the first movie, after he did all this fighting throughout the whole movie, he go back to the Bay, renovate the university or the library or something, and then he's talking about rebuilding the Bay Area. Right? And they keep referring to T'Challa as the Black Panther. Now remember, in the movie they thought he was dead, and then they went to the Gorilla Chief. It's telling you the story of Tupac. Basically. But they're using the reference of Wakanda, which is actually a reference to the iridium in Haiti, based on the components of the metals. Right? And this is why when the girl became the Black Panther, she had to go to Haiti. She had to return to the motherland. So she left Africa, which we used to call the father's land, the land of Enki. And this over here is the original land of Isis, but she gave it to her baby boy, Tahuti. to be the guardian of the earth, he inherits the Americas. And she kept for herself Europe and Asia and Australia. And she assigned what we call today India and Africa to Enki. So you got different bloodlines, but you can only tell by the male haplogroup because all of the women trace back to the first mother. And after so many years, the first mother's blood DNA quantum reassembles based on the convergence and divergence of genetic pools.
Is he saying Hall? Hall?
Yeah, the last name Hall, like Prince Hall.
Yeah, that's Chata. Yeah, Chata.
Yeah. They used to be Longhouse lingo. The Hall used to be the Longhouse. And Hall is the English rendition of it. It's like a big ass pole barn. But that's where the political meetings used to, because it was always accompanied by a feast. So the Longhouse was the government headquarters. And then you had the Red House and the Blue House. One was your ambassadors and politicians who greet the strangers, and the other ones was the guardians of the bloodlines, your Red House. And this was responsible for cleaning up the genetic fuck up, the Red House. And the Blue House had nothing to do with it, but they can't do it without the Blue House. They need both sides of the family involved, right? So if you look at what was going on in Europe from 711 to 1492, you realize that they was trying to fix the problem on their own, but they was too much for them. They needed help. They needed some Brazilianization going on. But that's a whole nother thing. That's part of the South American Studies group. We ain't got there yet. Indictment. Right? If he's privy to the indictment, that means he's a legitimate complaining party. And I was found guilty. Under the Restitution Act, I have to make him whole by surrendering any ill gains acquired off of young elders' stolen money. So when we go into the court and they find out, well, let me show you what he did with the money, and they're gonna draw up a financial chart. It's gonna show how much, what day I robbed young elder, how much I got from young elder, how much I spent on the dry cleaners, how much I made in my accounting process each week of dry cleaners. Right? Now, once they get done doing all of that accounting, let's say that $100,000 I robbed young elder for is now $1 million. I can't have it. They can't give it back to me. Now, where is they getting this from? It's in the Uniform Commercial Code. Until the young elder discover who it was that robbed him, under the Uniform Commercial Code, I can live off of that. But if he come back and say, hey, you the motherfucker that robbed me, right? And I was like, the gig is up, I'm caught, right? Now, according to Uniform Commercial Code, everything that I did up until this point was fine. But everything that I got that's tied to young elder's money has to be surrendered to young elder. Through the poison tree applies. How do that apply to what's going on with the government? They've been sending us into servitude, because prison is slavery according to the 13th Amendment.
That's right.
So they've been sending us back into bondage and voluntary servitude at an alarming, disproportionate rate to the other per capita population of the land. And by them sending us into servitude, and we not part of any agreements with them, we was not part, all of us wasn't part of the 5 civilized tribes.
That's right.
Right? The majority of us was part of the 4,995 tribes that's called foreign dependent nations, enemy combatants, belligerent tribes, non-treaty tribes, outlaw tribes. All those are different names that they use in reference to us over the years, other than the epithets that they give us for assumed nationality that we didn't take on.
Nah.
They don't want me to tell them I'm growth and development and that my chief Larry Hoover. They want me to say I'm an American citizen and the president is my leader. He's not my leader. He's not my chief. Right? So I can't make an allegiance with him because he's not my chief. And my chief is belligerent to anybody in public office. Why? Because they belligerent to him first. How do we know this? Because of how they entrapped him into a made-up, fabricated case and kept him in prison for 50 years. That's how we know. They actions, right? So that's called an overt act. When you seize the leader of a tribe, that's a blatant act of war. Right? We supposed to be running up in there getting our shit back, but we was under the George Washington Conjure Challenge, which was sorcery, which allowed us to be in a slumber for 200 years. We can't quite figure out what's going on. And now we can see it clearly because we're no longer in the age of Pisces and all of the veils must be lifted. So all of the veils being lifted, we can see clearly now the rain is gone. We know who they are, where they came from, how they got here. We know where they settled at. We know how they set up shop. We know their motives, their MO, their modus operandi, their method of operations. We know their kind games, all of their conniving and manipulative tricknology. 120 degrees of tricknology cannot beat 360 degrees of God body knowledge of self. It can't work. It's going to be 1/3 short. Because if you got 360, you take 120 away, that leaves you 240 to work with. If your 240 degrees of knowledge itself is not superior to 820 degrees of trick knowledge, then you fake it. So I asked a question years ago. So you say you a God. Do some God shit. You don't even know the difference between what gods do and what men do. Do some God shit if you want to be a God. If you're not on the status of a high intellectual capacity, you're not on your God mode yet. If you can't intuit, that means feel your way through what's being done, you ain't in God mode yet. All these people that's professing to be the chosen people of God, the sons of God, the saved people of God, and all these, they all are confused. They're not confused because they want to be confused. They confused because it was designed to confuse them of knowledge of self. So I was talking to a brother a little while ago, and he was telling me about Islam and Nation of Islam. I said, do you know why their doctrines is fundamentally different? He said, no, tell me. And I told him, the tribal rule is you can use anybody's information, but you got to make it your own. You can only stay in another chief house until you become the chief to establish your own. Can we show this working in the Nation of Islam by students of Elijah Muhammad that have took what they learned from Elijah and made it their own, and they opened up their own house? You got Clarence 13X, the Nation of Gods and Earths. You got Silas Muhammad from the new Lost Found Nation of Islam. You got Hulan X, aka Yahweh ben Yahweh, in the Hebrew Israelites. Then you got people that detest Elijah Muhammad after he taught them how to be a man, and they converted to Sunni Islam, like Siraj Wahhaj. Bilal Phillips was all associated with the early Nation of Islam movements in New York. But once they got to the point where they had outgrown what they thought was a doctrine that didn't suit them, they needed that discipline. They couldn't have been a functional imam in Sunni Islam without first being disciplined because of the nature of the people of the land. Because of our nature, the Nation of Islam has to have a higher level of discipline for us because we ain't easy to discipline. And we hard-headed, and we stubborn. And we don't bleed fat meat greasy even when we chewing it. And our lips is shiny. And our fingers is slippery. So we needed an excessive amount of discipline, an excessive amount of organized structure in order to be able to organize the knowledge itself into a cohesive format. A lot of people right now, they see the dirty Moors in the infiltration of our organizations. And then they blame the whole organization for the infiltrators' actions. Right? For the longest, everybody thought that Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad had Malcolm killed. Until the FBI files finally come out that two of the people that went to prison wasn't even in the location at the time. The one guy that went to prison was actually the only one he was the first one to get out. Make it make sense. He was the first one to get out, walked around New Jersey unharmed and untouched. But them other two sat in prison another 15, 20 years after that guy was roaming the streets. He passed away though, but he was the only one that was actually involved with the New York Police Department, the FBI, and the assassination of Malcolm X. The other two was innocent. They did all that time for shooting Malcolm, and it was two Negro FBI agents that was the trigger pullers. One of them was actually still standing around Elijah Muhammad after the fact. The one with the shotgun and the peacoat. He stayed in the New York mosque the whole time. While the fallout was going on, he knew he was an infiltrator. And he ain't never stopped talking bad about Malcolm. But he was the infiltrator. Right? So when we look back on it now with the FBI reports, and then we realize that all them years we was accusing the wrong people of the fall of our shining black prince. Just like Martin. We thought that some dude named what's his name? Was it Lee Harvey Oswald? No, that's Kennedy. James Earl Ray. All this time we was thinking that James Earl Ray was the trigger man in the Martin Luther King assassination until we discovered that one, the bullet didn't kill him, the doctor killed him in the hospital because it came out in court. And we discovered that this dude was charged with Martin Luther King's murder and had nothing to do with it, was nowhere near the site, and they paid him $1 million to confess and never paid his family the money, which they promised him to do. When they reneged on, all this came out in the trial. But also what came out in the trial is that Martin was set up by them niggas that was on the balcony with him.
Multi Jesse.
And they talked about, it's another receipt, if you go back a couple days on my page, where the brother was talking about how they was paid massive amounts of money to the church to bust up the cohesion by sending everybody off and giving them grants to do their own thing. All that was the fallout for Martin. But now we have people who don't understand what Martin went through saying that he was a traitor because he changed his name from Michael King Jr. to Martin Luther King Jr., just like his daddy changed his name from Michael King Sr. to Martin Luther King Sr. Martin didn't actually have a name change till he was like an adult in his 20s. But they never stopped calling him Martin Luther from the time his father changed his name when Martin was about 5. So he wasn't even using his government name at all. Guess what? When you use a nickname or a non-government name, that's a tribal name. That's your nickname is your tribal name. That means your people named you that name and it stuck because of your character and your personality. So when we're looking back on history, it's 2020, but it's clouded in a bunch of chaos to keep us confused. They had us thinking that Malcolm and Martin was in opposite ideologies. But when Dr. Clark told us that the contingency plan for the nonviolent movement was to unleash Malcolm. So they had to get Malcolm first before they get Martin. Strategic military planning. We never stopped fighting against the government, and they never stopped fighting against us. When we was complaining in the early 1900s, they didn't have it an open declaration of war on the record. They eventually put it in there, where they declared war on the people. We are the people. When you see we the people, that means nappy head, woolly haired, brown skinned, Aksumi Americans. That don't mean we the people as in everybody. We the people used to be the name of every tribe in their own tribal tongue, right? Even the word tribe is an exonym. We didn't refer to ourselves separate from one another because the sign language in the original native sign language for our tribal name was always we the people. So no matter, and there was another term we used called the kinfolk. The kinfolk was the ceremonial side that did the ceremonies, right? And they was the ones that ceremonial tribal members went to. They was primarily the Blue House, and they called them kinfolk because everybody in the tribe wasn't a blood member of the tribe. They wasn't in the tribe by blood. They was in there by honor. Different system, different standard. On the Red House, you had to be blood related to somebody, or you can't get in none of their tribes. That's why right now, most of the people, you can reach out to Chief Warhorse. She's not going to talk to y'all. It ain't that she acting funny. She out the Red House. If you ain't related by blood, she don't want to really F with you. She don't really trust nobody that ain't from her bloodline. That's the way that they wired on her side of the family. Right? So our rules, under the kinfolk rules, what we call our GD literature, that teaches us growth and development. And it teaches us how to recognize other tribes and how to treat the foreign tribes when they come on the land. Ambassadors is what we being trained for, right? Why do we need to be ambassadors? Because ain't nobody training us to be it. So the executive board put out the literature that actually trains us to do this work that me and Elder doing, right? I speak up for Malachi, but Malachi not my chief. Y'all gotta remember that. I speak up for Angel Bay. That's not my chief. Larry, my chief. I speak up for Prince Lowe, Four Corner Hustler, and those are kinfolk. They not my chief. But when they've been done wrong, and they've been attacked by the system. I speak up for Giant Africa, but I'm not part of the movement. I speak up for Mutulu Shakur, but I'm not part of the African Liberation Army. I speak up for Afeni and Tupac and Huey, but I ain't no Panther. Right? I remind y'all about George Soledad Brother Jackson, and I am a gorilla. BGF Blood Oath. Right? I speak up for Assata Shakur, but I wasn't part of the new African Liberation Army. All these different people was the leadership that was working to liberate us. So I gotta know what they was doing, know if they was in the right, know how they got infiltrated, if I'm gonna come out and tell our people why we ain't got our shit. And I'm telling y'all why we ain't got it. And No matter whether you like Trump or not, I don't care neither way about it. But he's doing the work we need done. He's dismantling their corporations. And Greenland is a critical part of Turtle Island that y'all don't even know. The story is told as the story of Loki and the Ice Princess. Because when Big Mama returned, that's the crown of Turtle Island. That means that the sacerdotal seat in Philadelphia is when it moved across the Mississippi, right? She's still gonna have to have what's called a embassy suite in Greenland as representing the crown chakra of Turtle Island. So Trump got to get it back. He ain't got no choice.
We should be saying the same thing that U.S. Corp. And
we are saying the same thing.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
You got to remember, Dred Scott applies. We didn't have any rights they was bound to respect. Right? They couldn't give us freedom because we was never slaves. Go back and reread the Dred Scott case. The ones who was captured and given freedom was called freedmen, but they could give them freedom under Dred Scott because they was already free. That's why they named them freedmen. It's also freeman, right? What's the last name? Liberator, which means one that's been liberated, right? So we got to understand that we never stopped fighting since 1492. The war never ended until now. Until now. It just evolved. When you go back to the first 300-400 years, it was bloody war everywhere they went. They couldn't go nowhere. And they was being protected by people that looked like us, that masqueraded as us. But they wasn't us. And that's why they keep calling people the Black Indians was protecting the colonizers. No. The black colonizers was protecting the colonizers. The paleface don't start coming over here to the 1600s. Who was we fighting from 1492 to the 1600s? They don't even get into the West African slave trade until after the West African slave trade was abolished in West Africa. So they said there wasn't no palefaces that was doing slave trading over there. And they wasn't coming over here. They was taking them around across the Pillars of Hercules to the Mediterranean where they had their slave ports at. The slave ports was in Tunis, Morocco, and parts of Egypt going into the Middle East. And then you had the ones in Europe that was in Greece, Italy, Sicily, which just took a major water hit. Sicily did. It's an island. Sicily is also where the offspring of Hannibal and his armies, who had children with the women from the Iberian Peninsula, they was exiled to Sicily by the Roman Negroes they was fighting. If you don't know who they was fighting, then you can't put this together. You got to realize Romans didn't turn pale-faced until the 1900s. All of those emperors was all brothers, but they got to give you the token. What is it, Marcus Aurelius? They had to give you the token Negro and then paint everybody else white so it'll look like it was an exception. Emperor what was his name? He came from Africa. And the only reason why they had to tell you he was black, because part of his rise from general to emperor, right? They told where he came from as a military genius. They said he came from Africa, so they can't paint him white. And then in that era, for us to believe a white dude came from Africa, paleface came from Africa.
Hey Rob, before we roll, we got about 5 minutes worth of videos. but it's dealing around the dirty morals. But let me ask you this question because it's gonna set up to watch those videos. Now, could you break down the Ponzi scheme? Because it seemed like to me this was a long Ponzi scheme set up by a whole bunch of infiltration for people that look like us that ain't us, and it seemed like based on all the keys you gave me and when I went to research, started looking into it, it seemed like it always lead back to the Freemasons with this black and white checkerboard flow. Like when they came out with the Nationalization Act 1790 that same year, you either was white or blackballed. You know what I'm saying? And I studied a lodge. In a lodge, when you want to join, when you got to ask a Mason, right? And then they see you do this test rigmarole. Then they vote you in, right? They vote you in by using all white balls. If you get all white balls, they bring you into the lodge. But if one person in the lodge put a black ball in there, then you can't be accepted to the lodge. So could you break down this black and white, the long Ponzi scheme, or the dude that started it and how they came up with it, what you was telling me earlier about the Ponzi?
So the game was okay. First of all, let's address the checkerboard. The checkerboard is not a checkerboard. First off, checkerboard is black and red.
Okay,
that's the first thing you got to know.
Okay,
this is not checkers. This is another game. The game is called chess.
Go ahead.
Right now, in the chess game, the white pieces are on attack. The black pieces are on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Being on defense makes you Humpty Dumpty. Meaning that you got the potential, but they don't want you in the white with the free white persons in law. They want to assign you to become the black piece, the civilly mortis, lost and dead at sea. That means that you was originally from the land. Mm-hmm. The white pieces on this chessboard are the invaders. We started off playing Battleship. If you go back, there was an announcement in the news back when Trump first took office that there was a British ship that he told they can't dock in the harbor outside of D.C. no more. The reason that is because we had to sink their battleship. But first we had to get rid of the guard ship. The guard ship in the bay represented the guardian ship of the Vatican that was given to the Empire of Britain, right? And they had to keep the Guardian, which was a guard ship, in the bay. Now, the guard ship is protecting the ship that ran ashore, the Plymouth Rock, the Mayflower, the good ship Plymouth, right? Malcolm told us we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us, right? Because he was telling us about the international complaint that got us in this condition where we had to come up with an alternative solution than bloody war. This was the George Washington challenge. But first, they had to make a blood sacrifice. In a book called the Bible, they got what's called the blood of the righteous, or first blood of the righteous. The first blood of the righteous in sorcery and blood magic mean when you invade a land, you got to get the highest ranked individual you can capture and kill him and spill his blood and use his blood to write the blood oath contract. This blood oath contract, we call it the United States Constitution. Not the one that's in the Library of Congress. That was the first Constitution. This is a secondary Constitution. Now, this is the Boston Massacre after the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party, the T is the square. This is telling you that it's a hangman game about to take place. In other words, it's about to be a public execution as represented by the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was the prelude to the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre culminated with the death of Crispus Attucks, and they have to tell us he was the first person to die, to shed blood for this nation. No, he was not. He was the first one of us to shed blood, that they can put us in a stupor by writing the Constitution in his blood. Right? Now, they still have to go on a killing spree because they got to get rid of everybody that remember the old ways. This is where you bring in your Black Brotherhood of Spain, right? El Español Hermanos de Negros and your KKK, because they are the origin of the KKK. The regalia of the KKK comes from the Black Brotherhood of Spain, which was established by Moors in the Dark Ages. Okay, now, these people in the South, by the tribes, is referred to as the Black Hand, because the leader of the raids always had on that white regalia, KKK regalia, but the Black Hand was always hanging from under that white robe, and it wasn't no glove. Only thing they can tell the antiquity to identify who their attacker was to tell them it was the Black Hand that hang from under the white robe. Later, they gave pale faces black robes to mirror flip the circumstance. And this is where you get your Judiciary Act, your false judiciaries under the 1863 Charter of Savannah, Georgia, by the French King George, who became King of England. He told them to take everything from us using the law. Well, the law that they given us is predicated upon levies and liens. The lien is the contract, because when you lien, you at a slant. The contract means against the tract or against the land, but you the living land. But they want to tell you the living man, because they want to separate you from Mother Earth. They want to tell the son that he don't have to honor the mother from which he came, as long as he can get the current that you can see, that paper, the green. The green is just the dye marker, right, that you put in the water to see where the current take it. And that way you can know what tributaries is coming from where in order to find out how you get into the mainstream. The mainstream is the old Mississippi, but we think the mainstream means the common collective of the pop culture. The mainstream is the Mississippi, because the old Mississippians is the oldest blood of the land, with first in time being first in line, having first right to the earth rights in order for one of the sons to restore the mothers. We remember the codes, but we have to figure out how to apply them in modern times with modern circumstances and situations. But we have to go back to the old ways in order to understand the redemption process. So they gave us the grandfather clause. They told you it was a Mrs. clause with your Christmas story, but they never told you that there was a grandmother clause in law, because the grandmother clause is tribal. That's why they keep erasing everything that the tribal mothers do on the land, right? If Lucy Parsons would have had the right strategist behind her, she would have told her, she would have sat in the sacerdotal seat in Philadelphia, she would have overthrew the country. But since she didn't have nobody tell her, it gives you flu-like symptoms from 3 to 7 days. And the flu lasts from 3 to 7 days on average. Right now, they running all this by us, and they creating all of the illnesses. Right, Earth was a paradise, so just finna go back to that. The only reason
Greenland.
Yep. Now, good you brought up Greenland, because Greenland is the head of Turtle Island. That's the head of the turtle on Turtle Island.
Yep. Matter of fact, I got it pulled up right there. There we go.
Yeah. And this is why Trump said, who cares if they landed a boat 500 years ago? It doesn't make it their property,
Facts.
right? Because there's a tribal claim on it. It's part of the estate that they returning to the tribes. And Empress Redbird is the center of attention in the government transfer of all of this back to the tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because she was the one who was audacious enough to sit in the sacerdotal seat of the land in Philadelphia at Congress Hall.
Yep.
So now they had a rightful heir that they've already surrendered to under the Rockefellers, no, the Rothschilds, Jacob Rothschild, right? They the ones who created the false paperwork claiming deeds to the land. So she had to see the foundational document that they use in order to establish their control over the land. When they gave it back to her, that put her in the position to say, look, the only way this works if all tribes is involved. Right? Well, all tribes don't have to know what's going on because it's like you only can be educated to a certain level. You can only work according to what you know. So the ones of us that remember the old ways, following the oral tradition, using the matriarchal right at the close of the age to restore the land back to its pristine state. So now you see Three Eye Atlas is involved in all of the cleanup.
Yep.
So they thought they was coming here to tear us down, but look, what they doing is they cleaning up. So when you understand what the light lock is, as we go through these other slides, then you'll see why we would say if Three Eye Atlas, even if it ain't real, the narrative that is pushing the information out, telling us that we're breaking from under that light lock that the Galactic Council put the Earth realm in so that the Earthborn can fight this war with the Anunnaki on Earth, but nobody's going to know they fighting the war until the veil is lifted.
Facts. And does that coincide with the Hopi prophecy?
It totally does, because remember, Three Eye Atlas is reported to have went behind the moon and came out blue.
Here you go, right here. And it goes into the story of the Blue Star Kachina and the Red Star Kachina. And there will be those who will walk as ghosts through the cities. It will appear as almost painful as they take each step, for they will be disconnected from their spirit in the earth, some being from the stars, some being from past worlds, some will even be created by man in an unnatural manner, and some will be soulless. There will be those who will walk in the body that are not from this reality. And then it says that there will be many doors to the lower world that will open at this time. There will be many strange beasts upon the earth in those days. We will house many spirits even within our bodies. So is that what you're talking about as far as like, because I remember Dr. Malachi York, Free Baba, he was also talking about the smorgasbord event. You know what I'm talking about? That kind of correlates with the Blue Star Kachina and the Red Star Kachina. How you have the beasts of the earth come to the surface. It's kind of like it goes into the biblical context of it, like the beasts from the underworld. They start to come to the surface and they feed on humanity. I mean, they even talk about that on in the Holy Quran, I believe. Yep.
Okay,
They also
it worked like this. Everything that ever was still is in another
right.
form. Right? Everything that ever was still is, just in another form.
Mm-hmm.
The layers of strata of the earth, it's like when you erase a hard drive from a computer, right? It says there's nothing on it. But if the forensic team get a hold of it, they can pull all the data off of it,
Facts.
right? After you erased it. Now, when you refill it, you still got the remnant of the old data in the new system. And that's why sometimes the old system that don't exist no more will pop up and hijack the new system. Now, the same thing applies to us and our experience on Earth. We've been here so long that the number of years is not calculable according to the human mind and the mathematics that we can wrap our mind around. These, what they call it, it's called the Kali Sutra.
Okay.
The Kali Sutra is the record of time.
Yep.
And the sutra means chapters. Kali is Kali Ma. She is Mother Time, who consumes all things in time. But anything that's out of time is in the realm of the chaos. And then from the chaos realm, nothing is dead. Everything is being chaotic. Erratic energies just flying around in the realm of chaos. So then the order comes into play when you wrap things within the context of time. The only way you could do that is we call it the womb of the Great Mother. Triple darkness is then contained as chaos energy.
Facts.
Which becomes divine Shakti. Then the Shakti energies divides itself, and now you have Tantra Shakti, two forms of Shakti energy. In other words, you have duality. The duality is masculine and feminine. Severity and mercy in Masonic pillars.
Yep.
Joaquin and Boaz.
Yep.
Right? Severity and mercy. And the one who walks the middle path, whoop your ass from pillar to post.
Facts.
From Joaquin to Boaz. Through severity and mercy. That's called parenting a child. Right? Because the mercy is when you show the affection to the child. And the severity is when you show the discipline to the child. But it also happened by the universe on the chosen ones, and that's why it seems like we catch more hell than everybody else, because we're being trained to do a higher functioning service than everybody else. Not because we're better than nobody else. It's just that the universe was able to use our life in order to train us to deliver the message of the future into the present, right? By unraveling the past. Because you can't make the last first and the first last if you don't know the order that they came in.
That's a fact.
So remember, we complain about pale faces having the illusion of leadership because they don't run nothing. But they had to have an opportunity as they corrected their DNA to rule as the newest species of human on the planet. So they had to have a sensation of running shit. And then you got to have what they call a margin of error. They got to be allowed to make mistakes in order to learn how to get right. If you don't experience no wrong, you won't never know how to get right when you go wrong.
Exactly.
So when you've been corrected from doing wrong, then you know when you're doing wrong, I shouldn't be doing this, because now your conscience is programmed right from wrong. And this is why they feed us moralism while they disobey it.
Yep.
They give us moralism as a means of controlling us. But they don't follow moralism.
Yep.
They follow the principles of energy manipulation. You can't control no energy that you don't know is there. First rule.
That's a fact. So it's kind of like a play on the emotions, to the point where they supplicate the emotions and they transmute it in the form of a weakness, because they know that our emotions is connected to the synthetic grid system, which is also known as the net of Indria. So it's another way to trap you. It's another way to trap your spirit here in a form of dark psychology, basically.
Yeah, but they can't really trap you though. They can't trap the soul.
Right.
They can contain the physical body, but they can't contain the mind. Right? They asked Charles Manson one day, don't you want, Geraldo Rivera, he said, Charlie, don't you want to be free? Don't you want to be out there in the world with everybody else driving cars and hanging with the ladies? He said, free? Hell, I'm already free.
Right.
I'm already out there. I'm in everybody's mind.
Wow. Yep.
Charles Manson was the patsy, by the way, a fall guy. Him and Joseph Sinky, who was had the Sudanese Liberation Army, they were supposed to form two armies and fight each other in the Armageddon in the race war called Helter Skelter. It was a CIA operation. The same person that taught Joseph Sinky and Charles Manson mind control was best friends with Jim Jones. Right? But he was a known CIA agent, and they wasn't allowed to put his name in print if they caught a picture of him. Because they had a picture of him with Jim Jones and like three other people, and the name all of the people except that guy. He was the one who taught Jim Jones mind control, and he the one taught Joseph Sinky. It was the program in St. Quentin. And the program, they was recruiting charismatics as the manufacturing of the false messiah to the world. The CIA was trying to manufacture a messiah that'll do their bid. That's when they was watching the boys in Brazil reading or cloning program of Akhenaten, which gave us Obama. Right? So now, at the same time, they watching Obama clones, a lot of them got killed. They killed a lot of them off because they sent them on suicide missions as special agents. And then they had some like the one that we know, Barry Soetoro. He was trained to be a charismatic political figure. And then they hired an actor out of Chicago to teach him how to behave like us. To program the clone.
You know, and you know who it was? It was the light-skinned man on Five Heartbeats, Dresser. That's who taught Obama how to be Obama. And if you look at the cadence, the hair and everything, like he acts just like Obama. He literally taught Obama to be Obama. That's crazy. A lot of people don't know that.
But when you programming the clone, right, you gotta have a mirror, somebody for him to mirror. Because they can't come up with their own swag. So you give them a handler, you teach them, tell them, they use a hypnotic program on the clone to tell him to mimic the behavior of the handler. Follow them around and mirror the behavior until you master the behavior.
Exactly.
Right? Now, at the same time they doing this, they're programming the political agendas into the clone. Right? We want you to be this political stance. Then they teaching them about the psychology of us. That's the most critical thing they taught them. Because we got to know how to manipulate us, right, into accepting him by being like one of us, but so charismatic. Right? When Farrakhan actually about the downtown vote, he told him the uptown vote will put you in office. He wasn't trying to get votes from us. He's trying to get what they call white America vote.
Yep.
Right. So he used the hip hop culture and its saturation in the white America as a Trojan horse to infiltrate white America and get elected in the office.
Yeah, that's why. But oh, we can get a black president. Heck yeah. So it's kind of the same thing they did with Donald Trump too. He also had a handler. He was actually best friends with the guy who played in the live action movie of Super Mario Brothers that came out in 1995. Yep.
Hey, I watched them train him on wrestling how to be the bad guy. And then
he was on wrestling.
And then I watched him leave wrestling